If you want to build a $100 million skyscraper, how much of your own money do you actually need? 10 million. 50 million. No. Donald Trump, the 47th President of the United States, proved that you need exactly $0. But wait, where does the money come from? How does a 20-something guy with big dreams but empty pockets convince the most ruthless banks on Wall Street and the desperate government of New York to hand him the cash to build a billion-dollar empire? The secret lies in 3 simple letters. OPM. Other people's money. Welcome to Sketch Economy, where we dissect the crazy math behind the world's biggest financial empires. Today, we are looking at the ultimate real estate magic trick. New York City in the 1970s was not the glittering playground of billionaires that you see today. It was a massive, decaying garbage dump. The city was completely broke and teetering on the edge of total bankruptcy. Crime was spiraling entirely out of control. The Bronx was literally burning, and the Manhattan real estate market had hit absolute rock bottom. Nobody in their right mind wanted to touch Manhattan. Investors were fleeing the city in droves, leaving behind empty buildings and shattered dreams. Now, the normal rule of getting rich in real estate back then was simple and incredibly boring. Take Fred Trump, for example. Donald's father built a massive fortune, constructing solid, affordable brick apartments in the outer boroughs like Brooklyn and Queens. His strategy was the definition of traditional finance. He collected rent month after month. He saved up his pennies. He paid his taxes. And he slowly, steadily built his capital before ever starting the next project. If he did not have the cash, he did not build. It was slow, it was methodical, and it was incredibly safe. You use your own money to build your own wealth? That is the norm. That is how the system is supposed to work for everyone else. But Donald Trump looked across the river at the Manhattan skyline and absolutely hated that slow, boring approach. He had zero interest in collecting rent from middle-class families in Queens. He wanted towering skyscrapers. He wanted lobbies covered in Italian marble. He wanted his name in giant gold letters flashing across the greatest city on earth. There was just one massive, undeniable problem. He did not have the money to actually do it. His father was rich, but he was not going to just hand over hundreds of millions of dollars for a risky gamble in a dying city. So how do you buy a luxury property when your bank account says zero? This is where Trump discovered the ultimate loophole in the American financial system. He realized a fundamental truth about capitalism that most regular people never understand. Banks are not vaults that hold money safely. Banks are businesses, and their only product is debt. If a bank is not lending money, it is dying. They were desperately thirsty to lend cash out to anyone who looked like a winner, so they could generate interest. At the exact same time, the local government of New York City was completely desperate for a savior. They needed anyone crazy enough to invest in their rotting city blocks and turn them back into gold to bring in jobs and tourists. Trump realized a terrifyingly brilliant psychological trick. If you can manipulate the desperation of the wealthy banks and the desperation of the broke city at the exact same time, you do not need your own money at all. You just need the illusion of guaranteed success. The concept of other people's money is the greatest divider between the working class and the ultra-wealthy. When a regular person wants to buy a house, they have to save up 20% of their own hard-earned cash for a down payment. If they lose their job and cannot pay the mortgage, the bank takes their house and ruins their life. The risk is entirely on the shoulders of the homeowner. But in the world of high finance, the rules are completely reversed. If you want to buy a hotel worth tens of millions of dollars, you do not use your own savings. That would be foolish. You use the bank's money to buy the asset. You use the city's tax breaks to lower the operating cost. And you use the future tenant's rent to pay back the loan. If the project succeeds, you keep the hotel and the profits. If the project completely fails and goes bankrupt, well, it was never your money to begin with. The bank takes the hit. The taxpayers take the hit. You just walk away and start the next project. This asymmetrical risk is the loophole that built the Trump empire. He understood that whoever holds the debt holds the power. And in the dark days of 1970s New York, he was the only one willing to take on that debt. He walked into boardrooms with extreme confidence, projecting an image of massive wealth that did not actually exist yet. He wore expensive suits. He hired aggressive lawyers. He made it seem like it was a privilege for the banks to lend him money. He sold them a vision of the future that was so bright, they completely ignored the mathematics of the present. He was about to go all in on a crumbling piece of garbage right in the middle of town called the Commodore Hotel. He was going to use a system designed to privatize all the massive profits while socializing all the catastrophic risks. He was about to build a castle entirely out of other people's money. But to understand exactly how he pulled off this legendary heist, we have to break down the mechanics of the illusion. Imagine you want to start a massive chicken farm, but your pockets are completely empty. You walk over to the local bank manager who owns a lot of chickens, and you say, "Lend me your chickens today, and when they lay golden eggs tomorrow, I will give you half." Then you run over to the guy who sells chicken feed and say, "Hey, give me a ton of feed on credit because my golden chickens are about to make me rich." Finally, you go to the mayor of the town and say, "I will clean up that toxic garbage dump on the corner to build my farm, but you have to promise not to charge me any property taxes for the next 40 years. Now here's the absolute genius part of the trick. The bank agrees to give you the chickens because they think the mayor already agreed to the tax break. The feed guy gives you the food because he sees you have the bank's chickens, and the mayor signs the tax break because he sees the bank and the builder are already on board. Everyone says yes because they think the other two guys have already taken the risk. You just built a golden chicken farm without spending a single dime of your own money. That is exactly what Donald Trump did with the crumbling Commodore Hotel in New York. He convinced the Hyatt hotel chain to put their famous name on it. He convinced the banks to lend him $70 million to build it. And he convinced the desperate city of New York to give him a massive, unprecedented 40-year tax abatement that saved him hundreds of millions of dollars. He used the city tax break to convince the bank to lend. He used the bank loan to get the luxury hotel brand. And he used the luxury brand to guarantee the entire deal. He did not build a hotel with cash. He built a hotel with extreme leverage and pure financial psychology. But if you can pull off this magic trick once, why stop there? And this is exactly where things got completely out of control. The Commodore deal made him famous, and the money started pouring in. He realized a terrifying truth about Wall Street. The bigger the project, the easier it was to borrow the cash. The bankers were so blinded by his new celebrity status and the illusion of success that they stopped looking at the actual math. He started multiplying this debt model by a factor of 100. He bought the iconic Plaza Hotel for over $400 million using borrowed money. He bought an entire airline and painted his name on it, calling it the Trump Shuttle, entirely funded by debt. He bought a professional football team. He started building massive, luxurious casinos in Atlantic City. Every single deal was heavily leveraged. He was issuing high-yield junk bonds with crazy double-digit interest rates just to keep the cash flowing. He was borrowing money from Bank A just to pay the monthly interest on the massive loan from Bank B. The financial balloon was being pumped with more and more hot air every single day. He was building a multi-billion-dollar empire entirely on a fragile foundation of massive high-interest debt. The leverage was so extreme that he personally guaranteed nearly $1 billion of those loans. He was playing the ultimate game of financial roulette with other people's chips. But what happens when the roulette wheel suddenly stops spinning? By the early 1990s, the massive financial balloon finally popped. The real estate market crashed. Interest rates skyrocketed. The Atlantic City casinos were bleeding cash and could not cover their massive debts. The Taj Mahal casino alone was a financial disaster. Donald Trump suddenly found himself owing $3.4 billion to a massive syndicate of 72 different banks. And the most terrifying part was that he had personally guaranteed nearly $1 billion of that debt. Mathematically speaking, he was completely ruined. He was looking at total personal bankruptcy. He should have lost everything and been forced to sleep on the street. But this is where the absolute insanity of the financial system reveals its true face. He did not go bankrupt. Why? Because of a mind-bending paradox that defines modern capitalism. If you owe the bank $10,000 and you cannot pay, you have a terrible problem. But if you owe the bank $3 billion and you cannot pay, the bank has a terrifying problem. Trump had successfully weaponized his own massive debt. He had become the living embodiment of the concept too big to fail. If the banks forced him into personal bankruptcy and liquidated his empire, they would have to write off billions of dollars in catastrophic losses on their own balance sheets. That massive hit would destroy the banker's own annual bonuses and could even drag some of the Wall Street banks down with him. So the banks had absolutely no choice but to save him. They practically became his hostages. Instead of crushing him, they gave him a massive bailout. They deferred his interest payments. They extended his loans. They even put him on a personal allowance of $450,000 a month just to keep him breathing and managing the properties. The financial system was forced to keep him alive to protect itself. And that is the ultimate macroeconomic lesson of the Donald Trump empire. The working class is taught from birth to be absolutely terrified of debt. We are taught to pay off our credit cards and fear the repo man. But the ultra-wealthy view debt completely differently. Debt is not a burden. Debt is a financial tool used to transfer your personal risk onto the shoulders of someone else. Donald Trump used other people's money to build a global brand. And when the entire casino burned to the ground, the banks were the ones left holding the ashes. This exact same cycle of reckless leverage and institutional bailouts is still happening right now, every single day on Wall Street. If you want to understand how the real economy works and how to protect yourself, do not forget to subscribe to Sketch Economy and leave a comment below. But borrowing massive amounts of money is only half of the billionaire playbook. How exactly does a real estate mogul pull in tens of millions of dollars in cold hard cash every year, but legally report $0 in income to the taxman? The secret lies in a magical accounting loophole called depreciation, and we are going to break it wide open in the next video.